tonight we're starting Esther. And Esther, fun fact, I almost forgot that this was in the start of my notes. Do you guys know that in the entire book of Esther, the word God is not mentioned one time? Yep. In an entire book of the Bible. Did you know that? I just found this out the other day, and then even Justin told me today, and I was like, well, how'd you know that? I just found this out. And Jenny knows. Did you guys know that? God is never mentioned one time in the book of Esther. However, the thing I want to point out is that God, although his name, the word, is not written in the book, his hand is throughout this entire thing. It's on Esther and Mordecai and all these people that you're going to be learning about over the next couple weeks. And so he's literally all over and intertwined with them in their story. And to me, I just think that's really cool. And weird. It's not even in there. Well, don't get ahead of me. And listen, I've been practicing these names, okay? And I'm just going to read them like I own them. And don't quote me on that, because I don't know that's how you really say them. But I practice these names a lot. So, okay, so basically tonight we're going through Esther chapter 1. So that'll be the main part. I'm going to read you the entire chapter really quick, and then we're going to break it down. I'm going to give you a little bit of history. I don't know about you guys. I really enjoy history. I've told you before, I really enjoy kind of piecing the Bible together as I'm going through and putting it together. So tonight I am going to spend a little bit of time sharing some of that with you guys. And hopefully, does anyone else like history? Do you like that? A little bit? Okay. Oh, good. We're not in school, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay. Well, I'm going to give you a little bit of history. Now, here's the deal. First thing is I want you guys to kind of picture Esther. It's kind of like a Disney princess fairy tale is what I was thinking of, okay? So we are going to not necessarily learn about her tonight. She doesn't come in the scene. But tonight we're going to start talking about a king. We're going to talk about a queen. Some little shenanigans that goes on, which sets us up for essentially our fairy tale. But what I want you guys to do over the next couple of weeks is I want you to figure out who you are in this story, okay? Do your teachers in high school ever tell you, shut your eyes, and as you're reading, you should, picture, a movie in your head? They never told you that?
To shut our eyes, but they say we should see it as a movie.
That's true. You can't read with your eyes shut. You what? That's true. I meant if somebody was reading to you, since I'm reading to you tonight. Okay, but you guys know I'm talking about you're supposed to imagine what you're reading. That's what I kind of want you to do with the book of Esther as we go through it over the next couple weeks. But I also want you to try to figure out who are you. Okay, because we have several main characters that we're going to kind of go through. And I really believe that each one of you falls into one of these people, right? Or something similar. Okay? And as we go through it, and you're picturing who you are and where you kind of fall, I want you to also think about how God is coming in and just writing this story through Esther's life, okay? Because there's going to be a lot of things that I think are pretty incredible that we're going to pull out and talk about where, like I said, God's hand is just written all over this, even though his name is not mentioned, right? And so then I want you to imagine in your lives if some of these things can pertain to you. Do you ever notice God's hand coming in and kind of slowing you down in certain places, right? Stopping you from making certain choices where you feel the Holy Spirit prompting you in certain areas, right? Do you feel him working in your life to write this epic fairy tale, right? Just like he's doing in Esther's. And if you haven't, I want you to try to look for that over the next couple of weeks. Okay? Because again, if we're believers and we're following him, he is doing those things. He's doing things every day that we don't even know, right? Where he's maybe protecting us. Or, sometimes I think about somebody told me this a long time ago, when you're late and you're speeding, maybe that's the Lord's way of protecting you from an accident or from something else. And so when you're speeding, usually you're getting out of control. Maybe you're running a really yellow light that's maybe reddish, right? Okay, and so you're doing different things. You're acting a little crazier, whereas maybe the Lord's trying to slow you down for a reason. So that's what I try to tell myself when I'm late. There's no reason to start getting crazy because maybe God's keeping me from dying. I don't know. So, but I want you to imagine, what is God doing in your life? And if he's not, how are you missing that possibly? Are you not being open to what the Lord is asking you or telling you or showing you? Or are you not necessarily open to him writing your story at this point? Okay? Little background. So it is the year 483 BC. Do you guys know what BC means? Before Christ. Do you guys know where Esther is found in the Bible? Yes. The Old Testament. That's what I was meaning. I didn't make that very clear. The Old Testament, okay? which is I'm going to bring up in a minute. But so here's the deal. You have King Xerxes. Okay, his name starts with an X. If you ever see it, that's how you say it. I'm pretty sure. He is 35. He's the king right now, and he is in the 3rd year of his reign, and he's pretty privileged. He's pretty spoiled, okay, this guy. He's actually come from a line of royalty. His mom, his dad, all these things, so they said he was like doubly royal, like his blood was, right? He is handsome. Okay, he's like tall, dark, and handsome. Okay, is what everyone thinks of this king, right? But not only is he tall, dark, and handsome, in Persia, he's like the tallest, the darkest, the handsomest guy, like in the land. Okay, can you all picture? Are you picturing this in your head? Are you picturing it? Taylor said, "I see him in the mirror." Ah, that's good. That was good. Okay, so here's the deal. You're with me that he's popular, and it's more so because of his looks. Like, nothing that I read said how smart he was, which we're also going to talk about that later on in the lesson. But he is good looking, okay? And so now we're going to back up from him. He's the king, but this is where I'm going to give you a little history lesson. We're going to go back a couple generations. Do you guys remember me talking to you about Daniel? Remember Daniel in the lion's den and his friends? Okay, if you remember what I taught you about them, they came from where? Jerusalem! Oh, that makes me so happy. They came from Jerusalem, and Nebuchadnezzar came in. He took over Jerusalem. He took all the people out, and he made them slaves over in Babylon. Okay, you guys remember that? Right. So that's where they all were. Now, at this time, there was, in the book of Ezra, which is just 2 books before Esther, if I did my math right, his name is Cyrus, and he is Xerxes' grandfather, okay? He becomes the king, and he actually comes, and the Lord kind of prompts him and tells him to go let these people go. Kind of go rebuild Jerusalem, take the things back that were theirs, and let the people go back, okay? So he, at this time, Nebuchadnezzar was like very in charge of everything, and because the Lord was with this king, he went over, and he just overtook Babylon and King Nebuchadnezzar, and he tells the people, go back to Jerusalem. Okay, so he does what the Lord says, and we all know that when we do what the Lord says, what happens?
It works.
It works, right? Good things. He blesses us, right? If you follow, he's not going to lead you into like a terrible place and say, well, that's your penalty for doing what I asked you to, right? So he allows the people to go back, and he ends up blessing him, which then he gets to his grandson Xerxes, who is receiving those blessings, and basically he's super spoiled, kind of bratty, really good looking. Everything I read kept saying how good looking he was, okay? And that's important. So we've let the people go. Now, something that is important is not all the people decided to go back. Okay, some people stayed here in Persia, and that's kind of where we're going to get into our story. Not so much tonight, but in a little bit, okay? Now we have, I actually, as I was studying, I kind of found this really sweet verse. Can somebody go to it for me? It's Romans 15:4. And you'll have to read it loud.
It's one of the few Romans I don't have memorized. I dare you. I'm there.
Okay, let me explain this verse. Actually, wait. I want you to explain it to me before I explain it to you. I want to see. This verse I found, I feel like sometimes when I read the Bible and I find new verses, I'm like, how did I never know this was in there? Because I think it's really fancy. Clayton, you got it for me? Yes, really loud.
For everything that was written in the past was written to teach us, so that through the endurance taught in the scriptures and the encouragement they provide, we might have hope.
Okay, tell me what that means. Does anyone know what that verse means to you?
God has written in the past, so it teaches us.
Okay, so former things written in the past will teach us now. Okay, have you guys ever heard people say like the Old Testament's not important?
Yes.
I hear it all the time. The Old Testament is old. It's when there was the law. There was all these things. It's really not important. What we need to focus on is the New Testament. When Christ came, now we have salvation and all these things. And really the Old Testament is just kind of like there. It makes me crazy. Okay? Like it literally makes me crazy. Because although, yes, we are no longer under the law, there are so many stories and things and just wisdom, I feel like, within the Old Testament that I feel like is so prevalent for our lives today. So if we just cut out half the Bible and say, it's old, like we are missing so much. So when I found this verse last week, I was like, oh my word, this is such a thing. It says the things that God has said, former words or former things in the past, we are to use them now for encouragement and for wisdom. And so if anyone ever tells you that the Old Testament's not important, you need to tell them, in the New Testament, Romans 15:4, it says that those things are important. Okay, I just want to point that out to you because I found that and I thought it was like, do you guys ever read the Bible and get these like Moments. A what? Brain blast. That is great. That's what I had. Okay, so these things are important, and this book is very important. My next question for you is, have you guys ever had a negative event, something in your life that you felt like hit you really hard and just like things were over?
Yes.
Like your life is over.
That is right now.
That is right now. Do you want to tell us about it at all, or?
My great-grandmother is going to be dead in like 3 days.
This is very sad. Her great-grandmother is going to be dead in 3 days. Why do you think in 3 days? Is that what the doctor said?
They're not doing any sort of life support or help for her anymore.
Okay, so how are you feeling?
I could barely come tonight.
Yeah, just sad, broken. Is she a believer?
It's strong.
Which is great. And that is something that I think is hard, is when there is death, knowing that she is a believer is good for them. We're happy for them, but like it's hard to be the family left behind. So that's great. That is a very sad story. I'm happy that you shared is what I meant. Okay, does anyone else have something that's happened in your life that you feel like has just like shattered you, like you cannot go on? Yeah, Taylor almost lost his finger. You should look at his video or his picture later. It's really amazingly creepy. Okay, yes?
I lost my best friend 4 years ago.
Okay, like no longer friends
No.
or died. Okay, that is very sad. Very sad. I'm very sorry to hear that.
I lost my dad.
Your dad?
Yeah, we're so sick.
Yeah. So obviously, I think that death is probably one of the strongest ones, right? Those are very hard to deal with. I didn't expect you guys to say all that. I thought you guys were going to tell me, like, we lost a friend, like, we broke up, right? I'm not friends with this person anymore, like, because sometimes we think that's really hard. It is hard, right, when we lose people like that. Or I also expected you to tell me, like, you know, a breakup. Like, I was just thinking, like, smaller things. So I'm a little caught off guard with all this. So I'm very sorry for all of this loss. It's very terrible. But originally I was thinking sometimes, especially as sweet young people that you are, we get caught up in the loss of relationships is what I would think would be our biggest thing. Would you guys agree?
No.
You don't think so?
No.
No?
Not her. Probably not that.
You do?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Rachel.
What?
Yeah.
Thank you. Wouldn't you be devastated if Danica just said, forget it, I'm done?
Yeah.
You would feel like your life was over.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a pretty nice ring though, so no.
Well, you can keep it. It's fine. He gave it to you. Okay, the point is, like, I think sometimes we have these losses, right? And then we feel like we can no longer go on. When odds are, and in my experience of the last several years, that's been something I've been told about a lot. Like, I can no longer go on because so-and-so is not in my life as they were before, right? And I always have to tell people very sensitively, I'm telling you, you'll go on. Like, your world is feeling bad right now, but, like, it's not over, right? And that's going to kind of come into our story a little bit of, like, the reality of somebody's life, like, their fairy tale ending, but also it gives way to another story to begin as the Lord works. So I just want to read you this quote out of this book. I was kind of doing this Bible study, which is what prompted me to do this story, and I think this is really well worded. So I'm just going to read this part to you before we go on, okay? It says, unless you've lived in a place I've never found with all your heart's desires met. Does anyone live there? All your heart's desires are met? Okay. Or without a soul who annoys you. Anyone live somewhere where no one annoys you?
I am the annoying one.
Okay. Okay. Let me go back. Or unless you live in a place where you've never found where your heart's desires are met and where a soul never annoys you. Job, we've been talking about Job, was pretty accurate when he said, man or woman born of a woman is a few days full of trouble. Okay, that's Job 14:1. So it goes on to say, case in point, I often run into people who tell me that they've been prompted to pray for me lately, and invariably I ask, has anything been wrong? And her answer is, something is always wrong. I still live in the real world where I get my feelings hurt, I go to funerals, I get rejected, I catch a stomach virus, I age overnight. Life here is full of trouble, whether it's in a sky-high mountain of small annoyances or an earth-splitting canyon of crisis. There's no escaping it until we escape these mortal bodies. The ending to each story is happy, but before the happy ending is realized, sometimes much grief occurs. I think we know the part about much grief, but in the weeks to come, as we're going through this, we're going to probably go through that a little bit more. And she goes on to talk about what's going to happen. But basically what she's saying is every single one of us has crisis in our lives. If you have not had crisis as much as some people have yet, you're going to, right? It says most of our days are filled with trouble. And that doesn't mean something huge and catastrophic. It could be something as somebody annoying you, right? Somebody was annoying me today when they pulled out in front of me and then literally went 10 miles under the speed limit. And I was thinking to myself, this person is crazy. And I wanted to get mad. And then I was thinking, what a silly thing to get mad about. Maybe I'm not getting in an accident well up the road because I'm going the speed limit, okay? But here's the thing. Every single one of us, that is how our life is, okay? We have joyful, happy moments, but our lives are full of junk and stuff. That is just what life is. And until we leave our earthly bodies and go into a perfect heaven and a perfect bodies and all these things, we're going to have those troubles. So we're going to have to figure out how to maneuver through them. And that's going to, again, be kind of more of our story of Esther. I hate that I'm not getting into the whole big story tonight because there's a lot of things I want to tell you. Tonight I'm just starting it. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to read the first chapter of Esther, and then we are going to break it down. Okay?
Popcorn.
You guys going to read? You have to read loud because this thing is recording.
All right, I'll go first.
No, I'll go first because it's my deal. Listen, there's a lot of intense names, so if some of you gets to the names, you're going to be like, just popcorn me right before that. Verse 10. Shoot it back to me at verse 10 if you don't want to read all those names, okay? And again, I'm just saying what I think, so don't hold me to these, okay? So verse 1, follow along. It says, now in the days of Ashurus, the Ashurus who reigned from India to Ethiopia, over 127 provinces, in those days when King Ashurus sat on his royal throne in Susa the citadel, in the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a feast for all his officials and servants. The army of Persia and Media, and the nobles and governors of the provinces were before him, while he showed the riches of his royal glory and the splendor and pomp of his greatness for many days, 180 days. Okay, popcorn, Taylor.
I thought it was Xerxes.
Yes, this is someone else. This is not the king. You just.
No, it says Xerxes on it.
Oh, well,
Don't popcorn to me.
it's different names. It's different names for the different.
Same
Don't
person.
popcorn to me.
Same person.
Don't popcorn you. Okay, same person.
Me?
Layla.
I'll popcorn it to you, okay? And when these days were completed, the king made a feast lasting 7 days for all the people who were present in Shushan the citadel, from great to small, in the court of the garden of the king's palace. There were white and blue linen curtains fastened with cords of fine linen and purple on silver rods and marble pillars, and the couches were of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of alabaster, turquoise, and white and black marble. Popcorn plate and
Wine was served in goblets of gold, each one different from the other. And the royal wine was abundant. The king delivered hospitality. By the king's command, each guest was allowed to drink with no restrictions. But the king instructed all the wine stewards to serve each man what he wished. Queen Vashti also gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King Xerxes. And the 7th day, King Xerxes was in his high spirits from wine. He commanded the 7 eunuchs who served him, Mehuman, Bistha, Arbona, Bigtha, Bagatha, Zethar, and Carcass,
Good job.
to bring before him Queen Vashti, wearing her royal crown in order to display her beauty to the people and nobles, for she was lovely to look at. Popcorn. Danica.
But when the attendants delivered the king's commands, what's her name? Vashti refused to come. Then the king became furious and burned with anger. Since it was customary for the king to consult experts in the matters of law and justice, he spoke with the wise men who understood the times and were closest to the. Oh. Here, I popcorn is good. I got the name.
I'll read their names.
Okay.
Sorry, I just took my eyes off it. Tell me where I'm at. There we go, 14. Okay. The men next to him were Karshina, Sethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marcina, and Memucan. See how you just own them. Okay, there you go.
Right. The 7 nobles of Persia and Media who had special access to the king and were the highest in the kingdom. Popcorn and Taylor.
According to law, what must be done to Queen Vashti? He asked. She has not obeyed the command of King Xerxes that the eunuchs have taken to her. Then Memucan replied in the presence of the king and the nobles, Queen Vashti has done wrong, not only against the king, but also against all the nobles and the people of all the provinces of King Xerxes. For the queen's conduct, all will become known to all the women, and so they will despise their husbands, and say, King Xerxes command Queen Vashti to be brought before him, but she would not come. This very day the Persian and Median women of the nobility who have heard about the queen's conduct will respond to all the king's nobles in the same way. There will be no end of disrespect and discord. Therefore, if it pleases the king, let him issue a royal decree, and let it be written in the laws of Persia and Media, which cannot be repealed, that Vashti is never again to enter the presence of King Xerxes. Also, let the king give her royal position to someone else who is better than she. Popcorn Tyler.
Then when the king's etiquette is proclaimed throughout all of his vast realm, all the women will respect their husbands from the least to the greatest. The king and his nobles were pleased with this advice, so the king did as Memucan proposed. He sent his dispatches to all over the parts of the kingdom, to each province in its own script, and each people of their own language, proclaiming that every man should be a ruler over his own household, using his native tongue.
Did you guys follow the whole story? You did? Okay. No. I'm going to do that part. So listen. So basically, this is a little hint to you, like when you're trying to read and going from actually just reading the Bible to studying the Bible, is sometimes we can read this entire story and be like, what in the world just happened? Okay? And there's actually quite a bit that's happened in here. I'm not sure if you caught it all. Yes. Oh. Yeah. Here's a couple things. When I'm not reading things myself, I struggle listening to other people read, and comprehending sometimes, right? So I try to read along. Sometimes I have to, read ahead, which gets me in trouble. I was afraid someone's going to say my name, and I was like, whoa, pay attention to, where we are, because I just read it as others are reading it. But if you read something, now what we're going to do is we're going to go down and break through it and talk through it, and that's what you should do to yourself as you're studying. Go back now, you've read this story, and start reading it a little slower, and then that's where some of that interpretation and the Lord speaking to you and kind of showing you what it means, instead of just being like, oh, I read a whole chapter of the Bible. Okay? So we're going to break it down. Basically, you have King Xerxes. I'm so sorry. And I was also confused for a second because mine did say that and it threw me off because I don't have my notes. It is the same guy. And I read about that earlier. One of them is it's just a different way of his name. I don't know if it's his Hebrew name or whatever. I don't know without my notes what it was. But it is the same guy, King Xerxes. Who is what? Good looking. Good looking, right? The tall, dark, and handsome. Okay. Picture him in your head. So here's the deal. At this time, like I told you, he's spoiled, but he's also been very blessed, okay, because his grandfather was doing what the Lord asked. So they basically own the world except for Greece, okay, and he wants it because he already has so much power and he's in charge of everything else. He wants to own Greece. So basically what he does is it talks about in the beginning here that there was, did you guys see, it was 180 days. Okay, and the first time I was reading this, I was thinking, oh my word, this party was 180 days. I even wrote that in my notes, and then I had to go reread and clarify for myself. He spent about 180 days trying to show off, right? He's trying to get the armies together. He's trying to get people to follow him because he wants to take over Greece, and he wants to be in charge of everything. Okay, so 180 days he's worked at this. At the end of the 180 days, he is now going to have this party. Did you guys catch how long the party is going to last for? 7 days. Okay, I would be tired at the end of 7 days, but this is a big deal. Okay, and he lets everyone participate. Okay, it says the officials and the servants, everyone gets to participate in this 7-day party. So he really wants Greece. He's greedy. He's a greedy, good-looking man. So basically, during this party, it's just like a free-for-all, okay? A lot of people are drinking heavily, which we're going to talk about again towards the end of here. And also something that was different, usually when there was a party held by the king, the men and the women were together, right? They mixed together at the parties. And in this instance, did you hear what happened? They were separated, which is a big deal because that's not how it usually goes. So he was throwing this thing for all the men, trying to like brag and get all like fancy, right? And she was over here doing this party for the women at the same time, okay? Now, something to know about Queen Vashti is that she was one of the most beautiful women anyone has ever seen, which makes sense. Don't you agree? Like the most handsome, tall, dark, and handsome guy and the most beautiful woman are like together and they're king and queen over the whole world. Doesn't that sound right? Does anyone fall into that? Is that, you remember you're supposed to pick where you are in the story, so see if you're one of them, okay? But basically, she is beautiful. She also comes from royalty, so she has a little bit, she comes out of the line of Nebuchadnezzar, who they took over, so it's kind of weird to me a little bit. But basically, she has a little bit of a chip on her shoulder because she's also royalty, and she's beautiful. And so she kind of gets a thing like, what do you guys, like, how do you think she acts? Snooty, and also like, I can do what I want, right? Okay. That's going to kind of get her into trouble here in a little bit. So basically, you've got this party, and it's a garden party. And if you guys thought of a garden party, you would think, oh, maybe someone's in the garden having a party, right? But at this time, a garden party meant essentially like it was like a huge park, right? You have these huge trees. You've got wild animals that are there, right? It's all these things that are also showing some of this power and this wealth, this exotic stuff, okay? So picture that party in your head. And King Xerxes is trying to show his glory. He's trying to show his power, and he's trying to get people to really like him so that they will want to go and take over where? Greece. Good job. Now, we go about halfway down. Everyone's drinking, okay? And we go about halfway down, and on the 7th day, it says when the heart of the king was merry with wine. So what is he?
Drunk.
It's probably pretty drunk, right? I would say 7 days is going to be kind of a bit out of your own thoughts, right? And it says he decides he wants to like show this final thing, right? That shows how great he is, which happens to be the queen. He wants her to come in and he wants to parade her around like this is my final amazing thing to show you all what I own, right? So he sends 7 eunuchs, and when I was studying it, they were saying it was probably because they were going to like carry her in on, you know, a thing and like walk her around and show her off. And so they go down to her party and they say, Queen, the king is asking for you. And what does she say?
No.
No way. Okay, little stuck up. A little bit, she's got this royal thing. She kind of thinks she can do what she wants. But she's also not clearly thinking, because what can you imagine would happen to somebody who tells the king no?
They die.
I don't think it goes well, right? Now, she says no. So the eunuchs have to go back to the king. I imagine them being like sweating palms and like nervous because it wasn't like an option, like, and they're coming back now, and in front of all these men, in front of all these people, they have to say, the queen is refusing to come. So how can you imagine that an incredibly drunk, powerful man is going to react? Poorly. He's not going to make good choices, right? Well, here's the deal. I'm not sure if you caught all of this and all of this, like, talking back and forth. They're all drunk, and all the men get together and say, that's not a good idea. Like, we cannot let this woman, if she tells you no and you're the king, all of our wives are going to start telling us no. It's going to, like, break out across the whole country, and everyone's, like, houses are going to be overturned, right, by the women. So they're all, like, getting jazzed, and they're thinking, okay. And the king says, here's what we're going to do. And he comes up with this plan that she is to be, like, banished from his sight. She is never to lay eyes on her again, and she's going to be replaced as the queen. Well, some of the men are also a little bit like, oh, wait, like maybe that's not a good idea, but no one's going to tell him that, right? No one's going to stand up and say, okay, wait, we've like been drinking a lot. We're all a little jazzed. Like, let's just calm down and think this through, right? They're all like riled up and encouraging each other to make a poor decision. Well, it ends up being a good decision, but right now oh, okay, I'm so sorry. It's a bad decision. We're just making a terrible choice. Bad. Okay? So this brings me to you. Have you ever been in a place where something's gone on and you get riled up, and then your friends and y'all getting riled up together, and all of a sudden you're like going to start a brawl in the street? Not really. But do you guys know what I'm saying? Our friends are our friends, and usually when we're riled, like they're riled, right? So if I'm upset and I'm telling my friends, usually they're not like, okay, well, my friends now. My like friends who love the Lord and encourage me now are different. But like when I was younger, usually people want to take your side, especially your friends, right? They want to get mad with you. You know, we're going to be mean to this person or we're, you know, whatever. Like, has anyone ever experienced that?
Yeah.
Yes, that's, is that good? Does it briefly make you feel good? It makes you feel supported, right? You've got these people who are like, yeah, we hate so-and-so, right? And you get all like together. But I guarantee you later on, if something were to happen or words were exchanged or whatever, at least for me, later on when I've calmed down, when I have breathed and not been so irrational and crazy, I will think that the way I had acted was either silly, I said things that were hurtful, did things that were hurtful, right, that I probably wouldn't have continued to do if I had paused and thought about them, thought about the consequences, thought about really what that was doing to another person, whether they deserved it or not, right? If I took time back, I could probably have avoided some of that. Have you guys ever had a situation like that where you have reacted and then later on thought, that was bad? Think about with your parents. How many times y'all get rude, we'll just say rude to your moms, right? Because your parents are, whether they are telling you can't do certain things, go certain places, and we are adults. We are all adults in this room, correct?
Very true.
Very true. Okay? Look at the 2 kids are engaged. That's great. Oh, sorry. Okay. We'll have to work on that. Okay, but you guys know what I'm saying? We react poorly because of our emotions. Can we at least all agree that we have all done that? Yes. So that's basically what's happening here is they have gotten themselves all riled up and they have now decided that she is gone. So what happens is you are going to start walking into this place where you have another woman who's going to become the queen. Can you imagine how it would feel to be in the shadow of Queen Vashti? Prior to, like, bad choice, I ignored the king, right? Like, she's the most beautiful woman and all these things. I mean, she's just, like, incredible. Like, everyone's looking up to her, and then you're going to, like, take her place. Would that be intimidating? No, you're second choice. Like, she's the best.
Really, you guys. Oh, he didn't.
Oh, yeah. I'm really the best. He just didn't meet me yet. Okay, meet me yet. I like that. Well, here's the deal. It can be overwhelming being in somebody's shadow. Now, this just doesn't mean in a relationship or where, you know, where someone's like more beautiful, right? It just means in anything. When you're usually stepping up to take the place of somebody, it can be intimidating. Whether it's at your job, maybe you get a promotion, right? Maybe it's in school where you get to be a higher ranking. Is that a big deal to you guys still? Like, where you're ranked? Like academically? Sports? Okay. In sports, it's a big deal. What if you become the head, what do you call in basketball? Like, is there like a main person in basketball?
You know, like, starters.
You go to state and other people don't? Your whole team doesn't go? Oh. Is that awkward? Like, do you ever feel bad for the people who didn't make it? Yeah. Okay. Okay, the point is sometimes it can be intimidating to take over someone's spot, right? Maybe even a friend. If you and a friend are going for the same position in something, whether it's on the basketball team, whether it's in something academic, right? And you get the spot or maybe they've always been it, and then all of a sudden you get it the next year, right? It can be hard and intimidating, which is kind of what Esther is going to be doing if she gets the spot. I'm not saying she does. But if she gets the spot, somebody is going to take over. And they're going to be in this woman's shadow. But the thing is that if you remember, Queen Vashti, just because she was beautiful and had this royal blood and all these things about her, she still made a poor choice. She told the king no, which embarrassed him, made him angry, and then she was banned from his presence. Now, it does not say what happened to her, but odds are, can you imagine what happened to her? She more than likely was beheaded, or she could have also just been completely banished from the country. I mean, but either way, she fell pretty far, if not dead. Okay? Do you think at some point she wished she hadn't made that split second to say, I'm not going to be your showcase or whatever, and you think that she ever wished she had gone in and as the king had asked?
I think no.
That's when she changed her mind? She had to know. I can only imagine being her and feeling this power that she felt, but she had to know that there was going to be some serious consequences from her actions of not going. So I can imagine, did she ever feel nervous? Did she just feel so full of like herself and what was going on that she didn't think it would happen? And that kind of goes to us guys. Like, I think sometimes we think that we are above consequences. Okay, we are above some kind of a reaction, and we think that temporarily while we're in this, or we're doing this, or we're saying this, that we're justified, and then really later on when the consequences come, we probably rethink it. If you're not rethinking your consequences and your punishments, then you might want to stop and think about them, because that's why you have them. And if you don't enjoy whatever that thing happens to be of that punishment, then if you don't want to be in it again, you're probably going to try to react differently the next time. Would you agree? Or do we just keep doing the same things over and over? Supposed to learn from them, yes. Yes.
Why did she say no?
I think she was, like, just from what I was saying, like, everybody's been drinking for 7 days, right? So everyone's already not thinking clearly. And I think she was known to be very beautiful. She was known to be, like, I'm like the top of the top, right? And I think she just thought she could get away with it, and she got mad that he was wanting to show her off, and she was like, forget it. You know what I'm saying? But I think it was also a rash choice, like a fast decision. I don't think that she thought about it, and she thought, oh, I'm not going in there, like, and you know what I'm saying? But it doesn't really say why. It just says more than likely she didn't want to be shown off, and
I don't think I would like to be paraded around.
Yeah.
right,
That's what I was thinking.
right. No, I'm not saying she was wrong.
Not from drunk.
Right. She was going to be on a thing, so up high in the air. No, I agree. Listen, I am not saying she should have gone and been paraded around, but also at this time, as the queen, you do whatever the king says. Now, let me also give you a little insight into their marriage. Even though they're like the match made in heaven, their marriage is not like this story fairy tale. Okay? He has a lot of concubines. You guys know what that is?
No, but it sounds like
Women friends. Lots of women friends. Okay, so there's adultery taking place. And I don't believe on her side. I think it's only the king who gets this special treatment, right? So, right, if she missteps, more than likely the queens usually are killed or whatever, or if he's just done with her. Usually kings in history have their wives killed or beheaded and they move on to somebody else. So it's not like they had this fairy tale romance and she just got mad one day and then he killed her, right? She was just a queen doing her job and her duties. He was the king, and she said no. So you were right. I wouldn't want to have been paraded around either, but at that time, that is what happened, is whatever the king wants, that's what the king gets. Okay? All right. So here's the deal. I'm going to wrap it up, but basically, it ultimately also boils down to King Xerxes felt publicly humiliated, right, in front of everybody else. And again, he's very powerful, so he had to very quickly show his power back by making this decision. And so my question is to you, have you guys ever felt humiliated or rejected or something? Like, have you ever felt humiliation? No? Some of us? I can remember a few times, like, I didn't usually get bothered by things, but I remember one time, like, I was in 7th grade class, and this person said something, and I was, like, completely, like, mortified. Like, I never wanted to go again. It was terrible. Like, this boy who I thought was the handsomest kid in 7th grade, like, it really was hard for me, and I felt completely humiliated and rejected, and that is, I would say, where you want to react out of that place, right, of hurt, right? I'm not telling you. I thought about telling you, but since you're here, I'm not going to tell you because then you'll make fun of me.
We're not gonna make fun of you.
I didn't have glasses. I don't know if I had glasses. Not you, just Dakota would make fun of me. I'll tell you girls later on. It wasn't that big of a deal. Honestly, it sounds silly now, but look at me. I'm so humiliated. I'm like, I'm not going to tell you what someone said to me in 7th grade. That was a long time ago. It humiliated me. Like, I remember, I can tell you, I was sitting like in this, there was 4 rows. I was in this 3rd row over, like halfway up. Like, I can literally picture it. It was by the gym in the Mays, old Mays Middle School. Like, I can literally remember it all. I don't usually think about it, but when you bring it up now, it's coming back to me. Well, what if he hears this on Facebook? His name was Grant Thiessen, and I thought he was, like, great. When we got into high school, I didn't think he was as great. I mean, he was pretty great for a while, but I mean, I moved on, so we never loved each other, so I had to move on. Okay, here's another thing that goes with that kind of that humiliation or that upset. Have you ever had a power struggle within yourself? We kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. Have you ever had that place where you had to make a decision and you kind of fought back and forth with how you should react? Or do you just react? Just react. Okay, well here's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. I'm not really good at like making, I can keep my tongue sometimes, but my face usually like shows I think you're an idiot if I ever was to think that, which I do not, okay? But here's the thing. I've been feeling lately like I hold my tongue in a lot of situations that I feel, whether it's wronged, whether I feel like this just needs to be brought up, or whatever, and I keep it to myself. Well, this morning I was in a Bible study, and one of the questions at the end of it said, how are you going to how was it worded? Like, how am I going to please the Lord this week? What am I going to do to show that I love the Lord? And I put down originally with my actions. I'm going to try really hard not to make faces at people like, you're silly or whatever. And I'm going to work on my actions. And then I really, as I thought about it, I had to think, you know what? I actually need to work on my thoughts. Because just because I think of this really thing that I want to go rant and write about on Facebook, so not so the person really knows I'm talking about them, but like, you know what I mean? Like, so I just want to get it out. But I don't do it because it's rude, for one. It's wrong. I don't think it's very becoming of myself. But I'm still thinking it. You know what I'm saying? And so then I thought more so, how am I going to please the Lord, not just with my actions, but also with my thoughts? Because if I'm allowing myself to get all worked up in my head, I'm really not that great just because I didn't actually say it. Does that make sense? Because I've still been focusing and thinking about it. Like yesterday, I was cleaning, and I was thinking to myself, it must be nice, like, never to have to, like, do any cleaning. Right? Which sounds silly, I'm sure, to all of you. But this is what I'm thinking. I was like, man, some people really have, like, a good life of, like, not that I have a bad life. I can't really explain all this to you in all these details. Our thoughts can really take us captive, guys. And so that's a place that I have felt very convicted this morning, that I'm going to work on that. I'm not even going to try. I'm probably still going to think silly things about stuff, but I'm going to try hard not to focus on it or to dwell on it or to get mad about it or to imagine how it would feel to, like, say something rude. You know what I mean? Like, every once in a while, I'm like, I have that inside of me to just be rude. I'm sure none of you know that about me. I just want to be rude sometimes, but I don't because it's really wrong. Okay? But every once in a while, I just think it would feel really nice to, like, right? Like, just say it. But it wouldn't. I would feel bad. Okay? I would end up feeling bad because it's never okay for me to sin because I'm hurt or I'm upset or I'm whatever. Does that make sense? So does anyone fall in that category? Maybe you don't necessarily be ugly to other people, but you're really ugly on the inside? Yeah. Are you guys ugly to your parents on the inside? Yeah. Listen, you should do this so you don't get mad. I used to cross my arms when I was getting in trouble, and I would, like, squeeze my arm really tight, and I would be, like, so ugly in my head, like I was real bad, like, talking to my parents in my head, like they knew what I was saying.
I raise my eyebrows a lot, and my parents get really mad at me.
Yeah, I'd get mad at my kid, too. See, you cannot raise your eyebrows. I am a mom now. That is rude. It's actually rude to give them the stare like you're saying rude things in your head. Not okay. So, you give him a stone. You can give him a stone face, but you got to work on your eyebrows.
Another way to trick your parents, when they're yelling at you,
Listen, whoa, we're getting confused. We're talking about working on things that are wrong, even if people don't know, not giving new tips on how to be ugly.
you're not being ugly, you just smile at them.
Girl, my kids started smiling at me when they were getting in trouble. I am telling you, I would whoop their butts. Like, that is rude.
Smile at them, tell them I love them.
Okay, when my kid does it, I'm going to tell you how I react. I don't know. Okay, so here's the deal. Come back in with me. Stop thinking of terrible ways to, like, shame your parents in your head. Okay, here's the deal. So, I kind of gave it away a little bit earlier of my friends now, but what can you do if somebody comes to you all riled up, or you're feeling riled up? What is a better response, or what is something you can do instead of everyone getting riled up together? What should we do? Give them a Snickers. What else? Love them. Okay, here's what I do. I have people now that encourage me properly. Okay? They don't say, yeah, let's go, like, have a brawl in the street, right? My friends say, hey, why don't we like process this, right? Maybe, and I try to do this a lot more. I try to think of maybe how is the other person coming from? Like, has this been misinterpreted? Like something that was said to me and I was offended? And so I'm trying to like see the other side. And I have people who calm me down and try to encourage me instead of like riling me up more.
Like a serious one, don't buy into their stuff. If they're like mad about it, don't like fuel that fire.
Right, don't fuel their fire. Exactly, because that is not helping anybody, right? So are you willing to tell your friends, hey, let's calm down, like, let's look at this. Sometimes when I feel like I'm playing the devil's advocate, it is kind of like this special road you're walking because you're trying not to, like, anger the beast who's already riled up, but you're also trying to calm them down. And so I actually went to this Priscilla Schreier on Sunday night, and she said something I thought was really good. And it's something I'm not very good at in my own life, but she said one day she got kind of upset, and she called her friend who she goes to for accountability, and she was just telling her like what was going on in their life, right? She was like explaining to her and complaining essentially. And her friend said, whoa. Now, if somebody woed me when I was talking, like it might upset me a little bit, but she paused and this friend of hers, which I assume she went to because she looked up to her, this friend of hers says, listen, if you're just spouting your mouth off, then you're giving the enemy this tool to like take over and do damage in your life, right? You're allowing Satan to take these words and these complaints and this stuff, and he's going to use that against you in a way that will hurt you. But if you're speaking scripture about your situation, then he can't use that. He can't take scripture and turn it around and use it as a tool to harm you. And what that means is what does the Bible tell us and what is the different things? And so using that as you're talking about what's going on. Does that make sense? It's a little hard because a lot of us don't know scripture to just quote like that, right? Or to use in our conversations, to use as we're talking or when we're upset, we don't pull those things out. And so that's another thing I've been challenged is, you know what? When I'm feeling upset about something, I probably need to find scripture first that kind of meshes together because then I'm not just running my mouth over here, which is going to get me into trouble. Even if that person doesn't know, I thought these things about them, it's going to come back and Satan is going to use that, right? Whether it's through your other friends who then go over or through some kind of a situation. Okay? And your feelings do not have intellect. I have so many lessons I want to teach from that night. Your feelings, like we all have, our feelings are so real to us, but they do not have intellect. They don't have a brain, right? Your feelings it's the way you feel, but it's not necessarily really the way something is. Does that make sense? Because your feelings can trick you and play jokes on you, and you can see something completely wrong, and then, like, if somebody was to woe me, I might get a little, like, fired up even more instead of seeing what was really happening. Does that make sense? Because I'm letting my feelings take over, and I'm letting my feelings make the decisions instead of actually letting, like, the facts and what's really going on lead me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got you.
You with me? Okay, so that was a little off, probably because I don't have my notes, but basically what I want you guys to know is, where are you at so far in this story? Okay, are you the king who is making poor decisions? He has a big ego, and he's trying to prove a point. He's trying to find this, like, power, and he's trying to, like, get more of it. Are you somewhere in there? Are you a person who's trying to gain popularity by making choices, whatever that may be, that you think will raise you up? Okay? Are you the queen who says, I'm a little snotty, I can do what I want, I'm not really worried about consequences that can be very damaging or ending to my life? Okay, those are the two main people we've talked about so far. And then as far as our emotions and when people are talking to us and getting riled up, are you a person who, when someone is speaking to you, such as the king, you get them riled up, or do you help diffuse situations? Because I can assure you that we really need to be diffusers, which is hard when the people that we love or care about are riled up, right? We want to have that, like, I'm with you, okay? But I'm telling you, if we learn to be diffusers and that devil's advocate where we kind of say, hey, let's kind of relook at this, I guarantee you we can save a lot of hurt feelings, consequences, whatever it may be from happening if we can help diffuse that. Are you guys willing to say that to your friends, like if someone's kind of freaking out, like to calm them down? Do you think you'll have bad consequences from them? Yeah? If your friend was like going to be ticked off at you, you're breaking up, never to be friends again, would you still be willing to try to like do what was right, or would you rather just like get riled and like get riled? All right, we're going to work on that. Okay, the very last thing, guys. Have you ever given empty threats? That's another thing I thought. I don't know. I think that he was really embarrassed, the king, but I don't know how Queen Vashti was thinking. Did she think that was going to turn out well for her? So what I mean by empty threats is sometimes we threaten things of like, well, I'm going to break up with you. Like, if you don't do this, if you don't do that, I'm going to break up with you, right? And so sometimes people give in to those threats. And sometimes people put up with it because you're not really going to break up, probably. They're just like, it's a threat. Does that make sense? Okay, or like maybe you have friends who are influencing you poorly or whatever, and people like to threaten each other, which I also think is weird when you're friends. Like, why would you threaten people that you love? Okay, maybe you threaten your parents. Oh, well, I'm not coming home, right? You're not going to let me, but I'm just going to do this, right? And we all try to throw around these threats without fully thinking of our consequences or what's going to happen, or maybe we don't think anything is going to happen to us. But I guarantee you, when we have to deal with those, if we're honest, a lot of us would say, I wish I didn't act like that. Now, here's the deal. Some of us, it may be that first time we're punished. I don't want to do that again. I can tell you from my testimony, it took me several years of going through this place of like being riled up, right? Before I realized that's not really the person I am. That's not who God has created me to be. That's not who I want to be in this life I've created over here for myself, to where I said, that is not what I want for my whole life. So some of you may walk in that for a while. You may make the same mistakes, the same consequences. You may be fighting these battles with your parents, with your friends, with relationships, whatever. And at some point, you're going to look back and you're going to say, I wished I hadn't done this, or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? Because our stories are all going to be different. So I would just really encourage you to try to skip all that shenanigans in the middle, and the first time, sit back and look, is that where you want your life headed? Is this person who you want to really be investing in, or these friendships, or whatever it is that really where you want to go? And is it going to be worth it for the things that you may lose, for the consequences you may get, or wherever that may take your life? So that's just what I want you to think about. This was just kind of the first week. We obviously didn't really talk about Esther, but she's going to come on the scene, and I'm really excited to get into it a little more. It was really hard for me not to talk about her. Obviously, I told you she's going to be the what?
The queen.
Maybe.
Yeah, the queen.
I don't know. I mean, the whole book is written about her, and it's a Disney fairy tale. So, maybe not. Maybe she gets close, and it's like taken from her.
Do you ever wish that Disney would make this?
Well, here's the deal. So we're going to watch the movie. It's obviously not a Disney movie, but it's a very cool movie to get to watch it play out. Does anyone know the whole story of Esther? Do not read ahead. It's a very great story.
I'm not good at
Let's go through it now.
Okay, hey. I need to pray because it's 8:03. I got a little talking in there for a minute. Okay, let's just pray, and then you'll be dismissed. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I just thank you so much for this evening, and I thank you for just our conversation and kind of going through this, Lord. And I just really ask that as we are walking through this book of Esther and we're kind of figuring out who we are and who we relate with, Lord, and really how you're kind of working our own stories out, God, that we don't necessarily have to stay if we find that we identify with the king or the queen, Lord, but if we can change, Lord, that we don't have to live in those consequences forever, and that doesn't have to be who we are. And I just ask that you would be with each of these kids, Lord, as they are dealing with different relationships, whether it's with their parents, with their friends, with boyfriends or girlfriends, Lord, that you would just really help us to consider consequences and actions that we are taking now, Lord, that we would make wise choices and that we would make choices that really ultimately point to your glory and your grace in our lives. And just ask that you be with us this week. In your name, amen.